During a winter snowfall, a queen sat sewing at her window, which had a frame of black ebony wood. She accidentally pricked her finger with the needle, causing 3 drops of blood to fall into the snow. The red on the white looked so beautiful that she thought to herself, "Oh, how I wish that I had a daughter whose skin was white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony." Soon after that, the queen gave birth to a baby girl with her skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. She was named Snow White. Sadly, the queen died when the child was born. We'll call her Snow White.
Her skin is as white as snow, her lips as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. What a beautiful baby girl!
A year later, the king took another wife. The new queen was beautiful, but wicked and arrogant. She couldn't bear to be surpassed in beauty by anyone. She had a magic mirror, which she asked every morning,
"Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?"
And the mirror would always answer,
"You, my queen, are fairest of all."
Then the queen was satisfied, for she knew that the mirror spoke the truth.
"Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?"
You, my queen, are fairest of all.
However, when Snow White reached the age of 7, she was as beautiful as the light of day, and even more beautiful than the queen herself. One day, when the queen asked her mirror, it answered,
"My queen, you are the fairest here, so true. But Snow White is 1,000 times more beautiful than you."
This gave the queen a great shock. The queen became green with envy, and from that hour on, she hated Snow White more and more each day. At last, the queen called for a huntsman and said,
"Take Snow White out into the woods, kill her, and as proof that she is dead, bring her lungs and her liver back to me." "Kill her, and as proof that she is dead, bring her lungs and her liver back to me."
"But, Your Majesty, Your Majesty."
The huntsman obeyed and took Snow White into the woods. When he took out his hunting knife and was about to kill her, she cried, begged for her life, and promised never to come home again. Because Snow White was so beautiful, the huntsman took pity on her. Just then a boar came running by. He killed it, cut out its lungs and liver, and took them back to the queen as proof of Snow White's death.
"Run away, you poor child. Don't let the queen catch you again."
"Oh, dear huntsman, let me live. I will run into the wild woods and never come back."
"Run away, you poor child. Don't let the queen catch you again." Wandering
alone through the forest, Snow White was very scared. Wild animals jumped at her, but they did her no harm. Just as evening was about to fall, she saw a tiny cottage and went inside to rest. Everything in the house was small but clean. There were 7 little plates, 7 knives and forks, and 7 cups on a table. There were also 7 beds standing in a row, covered with white sheets. Being very hungry and thirsty, Snow White ate a little bread from each little plate and drank a drop of wine from each cup. She did not want to empty one person's plate and cup only. She then felt so tired that she lay down on one of the beds, but it didn't seem to suit her. One was too long, another too short. At last, the seventh one was right. She remained lying in it and fell asleep. I'm so hungry. I'll eat a little bread from each plate so as not to finish up one portion alone. When it was dark, the masters of the house returned home. They were 7 dwarfs who dug for ore in the mountains. They lit their candles and realized that someone must have been in their cottage. Who has been sitting in my little chair? Who has been eating from my little plate? Who has been drinking from my cup? Said the dwarfs. When the 7th one looked at his bed, he saw the sleeping Snow White. Then he told the others, who held their candles high and shone the light on Snow White. My goodness, they cried, she is so beautiful. They were so happy that they didn't wake her up but let her sleep on. She must be a princess. What a beautiful girl! Hush! Keep your voice down, or she'll be woken up. The next morning, Snow White woke up, and she was frightened when she saw the 7 dwarfs. But they were friendly and kind, so she explained to them what had happened. The dwarfs took pity on her, saying, If you will keep house for us, and cook, make beds, wash, sew, and knit, and keep everything clean and orderly, then you can stay with us. Snow White agreed. Every morning, the dwarves went into the mountains looking for ore, and in the evening, when they came back home, their meal had to be ready. They also warned her to be careful and to let no one into the house. Goodbye! Go home soon! Snow White, close the door and don't let anyone in the house. Meanwhile, the queen, believing that Snow White was dead, looked in her magic mirror and asked, Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all? It answered,
You, my queen, are fair, it is true. But Snow White, beyond the mountains, with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times fairer than you.
The queen trembled with anger as she realized that the huntsman had tricked her and Snow White was still alive. So she kept thinking about how to get rid of the young princess.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?
You, my queen, are fair, it is true. But Snow White, beyond the mountains, with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times fairer than you.
What? Is she still alive? Just wait and see. I'll kill you myself.
At last, the queen thought of a plan. She disguised herself as an old woman and went across the 7 mountains until she came to the dwarf's house. Knocking at the door, she cried, Beautiful wares for sale! Then the old woman offered Snow White a colorful, silky, laced bodice. I can let that honest woman in, thought the girl. So she opened the door and bought the pretty bodice lace. The old woman asked if she could help to lace her up properly. Snow White, suspecting nothing, let her do up the new lace. The old woman pulled so quickly and hard that the princess couldn't breathe. Snow White fell to the floor as if she were dead. The old woman at once hurried away.
Don't lace it too tightly, please. Done. Breathe. It's all over. Now I'm the most beautiful of all this land.
Not long after that, the dwarves came home. They were terrified to find Snow White lying on the floor, deathly pale and still. They raised her up and cut the lace in two after seeing how tightly she was laced. Snow White began to breathe and came back to life. Then she told the dwarves what had happened. The 7 dwarves said, "The old woman was no one else but the wicked queen. Take care and let no one in when we aren't with you."
Snow White, wake up!
Oh, am I still alive? Thank you so much. Returning home, the queen asked her mirror, which revealed Snow White's survival. Speechless with rage, she made a poisoned comb, disguised herself as a comb seller, and came to the dwarf's house again. The queen knocked at the door, but Snow White said, "Go away! I'm not allowed to let anyone in."
"But you aren't forbidden to look,"
said the old woman, taking out the poisoned comb and holding it up. Snow White liked it so much that she opened the door. She also let the old woman comb her hair. No sooner was the comb put in her hair than the poison began to work. Snow White fell down unconscious, and the queen walked away.
"Let me comb your hair." "There is no one more beautiful than me in this land now." Ha 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 ha.
Fortunately, the dwarves came home shortly afterwards. Seeing Snow White lying on the ground as if she were dead, they immediately suspected her stepmother. They examined her and found the poisoned comb. They removed it from her hair, and she came to herself again. Once again, the dwarves warned her to be careful and not to open the door for anyone. Ah, it's this one! The Old Peddler Woman is no other than the wicked queen. You need to always be on the alert.
Snow White, never let anyone in the house.
Back at home, the queen asked the mirror, and it answered as before. Trembling and shaking with anger, she went to a secret room and made a poisoned apple, with one red side and one white side. The queen disguised herself as a peasant woman and came to the dwarf's house. She knocked at the door, but Snow White didn't dare to open it. Then she offered the poisoned apple to the girl. While Snow White was hesitant to accept it, the old woman said,
"Are you afraid of poison? Look, I'll cut the apple in two. You'll eat the red half, and I'll eat the white half."
The apple had been so cunningly made that only the red half was poisoned. Seeing the old woman eating the apple and thinking it harmless, Snow White stretched out her hand and took the poisoned half. Snow White took a bite, and she fell to the ground, dead.
"Are you afraid of poison? I'll eat the white half, and you'll eat the red half. Do you agree?"
Nobody can save you now! Coming home in the evening, the dwarfs found Snow White lying on the ground and not breathing at all. They lifted her up and looked for something poisonous, but they found nothing. Snow White was dead. The dwarves cried for 3 days. They laid the girl in a coffin of clear glass. Then they put the coffin outside on a mountain, and one of them always stayed with it and watched over her. The dwarves didn't bury Snow White, as she looked like she was asleep, with her skin as white as snow, her lips as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony wood.
Snow White, we will miss you very much. Snow White, Snow White, Snow White.
One day, a prince rode through the forest and came to the mountain where Snow White lay in her glass coffin. She looked so beautiful that he instantly fell in love with her. The prince asked the dwarves if he might have the coffin. He also said that he would honor her and respect her as his most cherished one. The dwarves felt pity for him and gave him the coffin. The prince ordered his servants to carry the coffin away. On the road, one of them stumbled over a bush, and due to the shaking, the bit of poisoned apple flew out of Snow White's throat. It wasn't long before she opened her eyes, threw open the cover of the coffin, and sat up, alive and well.
Where am I? Where am I?
Snow White, thank God, you're alive again!
Where am I?
Full of joy, the prince took Snow White to his palace and got married with her. Their wedding was planned with great splendor and majesty. Snow White's wicked stepmother was also invited to the feast. The queen, who was very happy as she still believed that Snow White was dead, dressed herself in beautiful clothes and again asked her mirror,
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?
The mirror answered,
You, my queen, are fair, it is true, but the young queen is 1,000 times fairer than you.
Hearing that, the queen was anxious to see the bride. When she arrived at the feast, she recognized Snow White. She became so angry that her wicked heart broke and she was gone. Snow White and the prince lived together happily forever and ever. It's a happy ending, isn't it? Good people will enjoy happiness, while wicked people will be punished for their envy. Remember to always be good, obey your parents, and study hard, and everyone will love you.
No! No! It's impossible! Ah!
It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring, he went to bed and bumped
without touching anything. These rooms led into a garden of fine fruit.